Namaste. Welcome back to my channel Qubit Educational Services. My name is Pranesh. In this video, I am going to solve mathematics questions from the ICER Aptitude Test 2021, which was held today itself. Okay, the questions are based on the memory of the students, so I don't have the complete problem statements, but because you have appeared for the examination, so you must recall the question once I present the solution. Okay, so this was the first question which we will discuss. So in this question there was a function given which was the product of x squared and mod, and it was asked whether the function and its derivatives are continuous or not. Okay, and the best way to solve this problem is to, because mod is involved, you have to split the domain, and you have to consider different definitions of mod x. Okay, so if x is greater than or equal to 0, the function will be x cubed, and if it is less than 0, then the function will be minus x cubed. Okay, now as far as this function is concerned, it is continuous. And is it differentiable? Yes. See, as far as non-zero values of x are concerned, they are polynomial functions, so no need to worry there. But we are concerned about what happens at 0. Okay, so the right hand derivative at 0 will be 0, 3 into 0, 3x squared, and the left hand derivative at 0 will also be 0, because negative 3 into 0 squared. Okay, so y dash is continuous. That means y is differentiable everywhere. Okay, now if you differentiate y prime or dy by dx one more time, 3x squared's derivative will be 6x, and negative 3x squared's derivative will be 6x. This would mean that the second derivative is still continuous. Okay, you can check it, but it is not differentiable. Okay, the second derivative is not differentiable because 6x is when x is greater than or equal to 0, and negative 6x when x is less than 0, which means it is 6 into mod x. This means that the function, the first derivative and the second derivative, they are continuous, but only the function and its derivative are differentiable. Okay, that means the second derivative is not differentiable. Okay, now if you have marked the option which represented this, then you would get 3 marks. Okay, so that was question 1. Very simple question based on properties of modulus function and differentiability. Okay, this was the only question, I guess, from complex numbers. So we had given, or you were given a quadratic equation, sorry, not a differential equation, a quadratic equation z squared plus 2z e to the power a minus e to the power a plus e to the power a minus e to the power a equal to 0. And I guess it was asked for what values of a, real a, are the roots of this quadratic equation real. Okay, so what I have done is I have assumed e to the power a minus e to the power a as alpha. Okay, this was the simplification. Then the quadratic equation reduces to z squared plus 2z alpha plus alpha equal to 0. Okay, and for real roots, now this is 10 standard quadratic equations. If you want your quadratic equation to have real roots, its discriminant delta should be non-negative. Okay, so 4 alpha squared b squared minus 4ac, so minus 4 alpha greater than or equal to 0. You can drop 4. That will give you a quadratic inequality, alpha squared minus alpha greater than or equal to 0, or if you take alpha common, it will be alpha into alpha minus 1 greater than or equal to 0. This means either alpha has to be greater than or equal to 1, in which both are positive, or alpha has to be negative, which means both alpha and alpha minus 1 will be negative, and hence their product will be positive. Okay, so alpha can be greater than or equal to 1 or less than or equal to 0 for the discriminant to be non-negative. Okay, now the second part of the problem involves recalling properties of the exponential function e to the power x. Okay, of course when x is real. So once we get the range of values of alpha for which the quadratic equation has real roots, if at all it has, then it boils down to comparing e to the power a minus e to the power a with 1 or 0. Okay, either it will be greater than or equal to 1 from this condition, or it will be less than or equal to 0 from this condition. Okay, now clearly the second one, that is less than or equal to 0, is never possible for any real a, because the graph of e raised to x looks something like this. Okay, with this point being 0, 1. Okay, so the graph of e raised to x always stays above the x-axis, so it can never be 0 or negative for any real a. Okay, so this case is now discarded, alpha being negative. So can alpha be greater than or equal to 1? Okay, let's answer that now. Okay, if at all alpha is greater than or equal to 1, it means e to the power a minus e to the power is greater than or equal to 1, or it means the exponent must be greater than or equal to 0. Again, for that we are interested in this portion of the curve, of the exponential curve. Okay, now if that is the case, then the exponent has to be greater than or equal to 0. Okay, that means to the right side of y-axis. All right, now if is this possible? No, this is not possible. Okay, if you want a minus e to the power a to be greater than or equal to 0, it means you want a to be greater than or equal to e to the power a, and this is never going to happen, and this is not very difficult to prove. Okay, if you consider the graph of y equal to x, okay, that is going to be a line like this. Okay, now see, at 0, when x is 0, the graph of y equal to x is below that of y equal to e raised to x, and after this the rate of growth of e raised to x is always greater than 1. Okay, which is the constant rate of growth of y equal to x, which means this graph never crosses y equal to e raised to x, it not even intersects, which means this is never possible. Okay, for any real number a, it can never be greater than or equal to e to the power that number, and because this is impossible, we have to conclude that for no real value, this quadratic equation has real roots for no real value of a. Okay, so if you had marked that option, then you will get 3 marks. Okay, so this was question 2. Let's go to this question. Okay, now this question was based on matrices. Okay, you were given a 2 by 2 matrix. Well, not given, but you are just given its order. Okay, and this matrix equation was given: a squared plus a plus 0 1 1 0 equal to null matrix. Now some of you sent me the question with this being identity matrix, but as confirmed by some other students, it was not identity but 0 1 1 0. Okay, well, identity matrix with its rows interchanged. All right, now this problem is extremely simple. Okay, you just need to know one property of matrices, well, 2 of them. The first one is distributive property. Okay, the multiplication distributes over addition here. So first you have to send this matrix to the other side, so it will become 0 negative 1 and 0, simple matrix subtraction. Now you have to take a common by using the distributive property. Okay, and if you do that, then you will get a multiplied by a plus identity matrix of order 2 equal to this same matrix. Okay, and because the question is regarding, or the options were regarding the invertibility of a and a plus I, it is enough to find their determinants. Okay, or it is enough to establish what the values that the determinants of these 2 matrices can have. Okay, now for this we recall the property. Okay, let me write it down. I didn't write it. Okay, see, if you have 2 square matrices of the same order, then determinant of their product is equal to product of their determinants. This was the property on which the problem was based. Okay, so when we have a into that as 0 negative 1 0, the product of the determinants of the 2 matrices on the left hand side has to be equal to the determinant of the right hand side, which is clearly not equal to 0. Okay, it is equal to negative 1. So if you have 2 real numbers whose product is negative 1, we can be sure that none of them is equal to 0, which means none of these matrices is singular. or both the matrices are invertible. Which two? A as well as A plus I. Okay, if you take it as 1 0 0 1, okay, that means this, then you can solve that problem by the Cayley-Hamilton theorem, but that is not what the problem was asking you. Okay, all right, so this is question 3. Let's go to the next one. Oops, okay, where did question 4 go? Okay, yeah, sorry. So question 4 was, again, I thought is a very simple question, but again you have to remember or recall the graphs of sine function and mod of sine. Okay, so there were two functions given to you, y equal to negative mod of sine x, and the other one was y equal to 1 plus mod sine x, and you were asked to find the area between these two curves and the vertical lines x equal to 0 and x equal to 2 pi. These lines basically gave you the limits on x. Okay, fine. Now one thing to realize here is that the graph of negative mod sine x is always going to be below and on x-axis. Okay, negative mod sine x, which you can see here. Okay, it will intersect x-axis twice or thrice, 0 pi at 0 pi and 2 pi, but nonetheless it will always stay below the x-axis due to the modulus sign and the negative sign here, primarily due to the negative sign. Okay, and for the graph of 1 plus mod sine x, this graph will never be below y equal to 1, the blue line here. Why? Because the least value of mod of sine x is 1. Okay, well, sorry, the least value of mod of sine x is 0, so the least value of y will be 1. Okay, and again you can draw the graph of sine x, but you can't take negative values here. Okay, so you can't draw the graph of that here because you are taking mod, so it will get reflected about y equal to 1. So you need to find this area, which I'm going to show it in pink color. Okay, this area. Now in order to keep things as simple as possible, what I have done is I have taken area of the rectangle separately, this area. Okay, height of the rectangle is 1. Okay, and the length is 2 pi, so that area is 2 pi into 1, or this area. Okay, 2 pi into 1 or 2 pi, and the remaining area is actually 4 times this area. Let me use orange color now. 4 times this area. Yes, okay, due to the symmetry of the sine functions graph. Now that means it is enough to integrate the function sine x from 0 to pi. See, don't take 1 because we have already considered it. Okay, so it will be integral of sine from 0 to pi multiplied by 4, and we know that sine is positive in the first and the second quadrants, so no need to take mod there. Okay, and the integral of sine from 0 to pi with respect to x is 2. Okay, you can easily find it. Integral of sine is negative cos, and then putting the limits will give you positive 2. Integral of sine is negative cos. Okay, so that's 4 into 2, that's 8. So 2 pi plus 8 is the answer. Okay, well, to me this this was a simple question, honestly, because there was no complicated integration involved, first thing. Second thing, the graphs were very simple. Had there been something like this, 1 plus sine of 2x or some 1 plus sine mod of sine 2x, things could have been slightly different. Then in that case we couldn't do this. Okay, 4 into that. So depending on that, the complexity of the problem would have increased, but fortunately that was not the case. Okay, yeah, so this was question 4. Question 5 was again, I would say it was confusing because you would not have expected such a simple question in the paper. So you would have thought, okay, how can it be so simple? Is there anything that needs to be considered separately? Okay, but you could have directly solved it by the simple property. See, first thing is that the function was given log of 1 plus x, where x is greater than or equal to 0, and this made sure that log of, well, whatever function that is, okay, that is always greater than or equal to 0. Okay, because log 1 is 0 and for any other number it stays positive. Okay, well, for any number greater than 1 it stays positive, the natural log. Okay, and the limits on x were 0 and pi by 2. So these are the angles in the first quadrant. Okay, now if these are the angles in the first quadrant or covering the entire first quadrant, it would mean that cos x as well as sin x and their cube roots, they would also be in the range 0 to 1. Okay, and therefore 1 plus that will also be in the range, well, its least value will be 1. Okay, so this is not an improper integral which requires special attention. So you could just use the property 0 to a f of x dx is 0 to a f of a minus x dx, apply the allied angles formula. So cos of pi by 2 minus x is sin x, and sin of pi by 2 minus x is cos x. Add the integrals, you will get 2i equal to 1 dx. One's integral will be pi by 2 because the lower limit is 0, and therefore I is equal to pi by 4. Okay, yes, again you can say that this problem might be complicated because the presence of log, but if you argue correctly, I don't think it is too difficult to handle. Okay, so the correct answer to question 5 is pi by 4, whatever option that is. Okay, so question 6 is the problem which I found was a bit tricky. It didn't involve any fancy differentiation until right at the beginning. You can solve it that way also, but this is how I did it. Okay, so it is y equal to cos raised to 4x plus sin squared x plus cos x, and it was asked what's the maximum value of this function, and without any hesitation, if I let x to be 0, then here it'll get y to be 2. Okay, and all other options were less than 2 except for 2 root 2, if you remember. So it was then a battle between 2 root 2 and 2, and because you don't have access to graphing calculators during the paper, it's difficult to establish this. Okay, but what I have done is, what I did is, I observed the following. For any real x, okay, the function cos raised to 4x or fourth power of cos x always is between or is always less than or equal to mod of cos x. This is the key point. This key point is going to save a lot of time, okay, which otherwise would go in differentiating right here. Okay, so what we can say is that the maximum value of y, okay, is less than or equal to the maximum value of the function cos x plus sin squared x plus cos x. See, essentially here we are not changing sin squared x and cos x, we are keeping them as they are, but we are using the fact that cos raised to 4x always is less than or equal to mod of cos x, and here we can happily ignore the mod sign because we already know that a contender for the maximum value is 2, so that maximum value is definitely positive. Okay, so yeah, so that's it. So you can happily replace cos x raised to 4 by cos x, and then this is a simpler function to deal with in terms of its local maxima and minima are concerned. Okay, yeah, so then you follow the process. Okay, cos x plus cos x is cos 2x plus sin squared x, dz by dx will be negative 2 sin x plus 2 sin x cos x or sin 2x, and you can again take sin x common, cancel 2, so either sin x is 0 or negative 2 plus 2 cos x is 0. Okay, so this means cos x has to be equal to 1. Okay, now observe that if sin x is 0, then there are two possibilities. Cos x can be plus or minus 1, and if cos x is 1, then there is only one possibility, that is sin x equal to 0. So within sin x equal to 0, both the local maximum and minimum things have been covered, so no need to go to the second derivative test. If you want, you can do that, but it has now been confirmed that cos, if you take cos x to be -1, then it will decrease the value of y, and that will no longer give us the maximum value. Okay, so better to take cos x as 1, and then sin x automatically becomes 0, which means this z always is bit less than or equal to 2, which means y should also be less than or equal to 2, and hence it is not 2 root 2 but 2. Okay, yeah, see, that's what I did here. Z max, if z is that, when is z max going to be there? See, you can also try with cos x equal to -1, but that will give you a negative value which you would not like. Okay, that will give you z min in fact. Okay, but we are not interested in z min, so we'll ignore it. We'll go to z max, which will be 2 into this cos x will be 1, and then hence sin squared x will be 0. So it will be 2 into 1 plus 0, so 2, and by the inequality y max less than or equal to z max, y max cannot be greater than 2, and therefore the option 2 root 2 is not right. It has to be 2, and it is 2. You can check the you can draw the graph of this function on Desmos or on GeoGebra and check that that is indeed the case. Okay, so this was, along with the quadratic equation, the question which I found required a little bit of thinking. Okay, yes. So this was question 7. Now question 7 was a limit problem, and in my calculator video I mentioned that, well, I guess not in the calculator video, but in one of the previous videos I mentioned that because the calculators are allowed, you can substitute a small value of x, like the one which is closer to that, let's say 0.01, and evaluate this expression there. Okay, and whatever decimal representation that you get, you compare that with the options, and 2 or 3 of my students have texted me that they followed that method and they got the answer as e squared. Okay, so that was one way to solve the problem, but it depends on how well versed you were with the calculator. Okay, but nonetheless you can also solve it by the intended way. Okay, first you have to split the limit, you have to split the function. Okay, you have to split it here, and then it boils down to finding the limits L1 and L2 individually if at all they exist, and then multiply. Okay, fine. So I have found L1, and this is a typical L'Hospital problem. Okay, you have to first take the log, and you have to assume that you can interchange the order of taking the logarithm and taking the limit. Okay, so log of L1 will be limit as x tends to 0 plus of root x into log of sin x. Okay, the standard power rule of logarithm. Okay, now what I did is, instead of dealing with root x, I substituted root x as t. Better. Okay, yeah, so if you do that, then the limit gets transformed to limit as t tends to 0, t into log of sine of t square. Okay, send this t to the denominator's denominator, so it will become 1 upon t. Okay, and this is actually in the indeterminate form, infinity by infinity. Apply the rule. Derivative of 1 upon t is negative 1 upon t squared. Derivative of log of sine of t squared is 1 upon sine of t squared into cos of t squared into 2t. Application of the chain rule twice. Okay, and then you can see that if I collect these two terms, the limit of that is going to be negative 1, sine theta by theta, but with the negative sign. Cos t squared 1, and it is this thing 2t which will take the entire function to 0, entire limit to 0. Okay, and therefore log of L1 is 0. Again, it is not L1 which is 0, but it is log of L1 which is 0, so L1 has to be e to the power 0 or 1. Okay, so we have calculated L1, which turned out to be 1. You can check it graphically. Now I think the second limit was much easier. Log, again you had to take the log, so that 1 upon x came here, or I directly wrote it as log of e raised to x plus x upon x. This is in the 0 by 0 form, the ideal case of L'Hospital rule. Differentiate the numerator and the denominator. Derivative of the denominator is 1. Derivative of the numerator by chain rule. Log, so 1 upon e raised to x plus x into e raised to x plus 1, the derivative of the inner function. Okay, substitute x at 0. Denominator will be 1, the numerator will be 2. because of e raised to 0 1 plus 1 2. Okay, so that is 2. Again, this is not the limit, this is not the L2, this is log of L2. So if log of L2 is 2, L2 has to be e squared. L2 is e squared, and finally L1 into L2 will be 1 into a squared, that is e raised to 2. Okay, yeah. Now let's go to question 8. This was a probability question. Again, I thought this didn't require too much of thinking. Okay, so the problem was something like this. There were 10 cards. A boy would pick one of the cards and he'll see the number written on it and he'll again put it back. So this was a with replacement problem. You can also frame it in the without replacement situation. In that case, the probabilities would change. Okay, and then so I have solved it in the context of with replacement. That means he picks a card, he sees his score, and he again puts it back. Then a girl comes and she picks a card, and the number that the boy gets was called M, and the number that the girl got was called M. And we were required to find the probability that the score on the boy's card is greater than that of the girl's card, on the girl's card, given that M is even, or the score which the boy got was even. Now this is a very simple question. Okay, first of all, you have to determine the sample size. At least that's what I did. Now, how many pairs are possible? See, if it were without replacement, then only 90 pairs are possible, but now it will be 100. Why 100? Because both the boy and the girl will get 10 choices to pick. Okay, so 100. Now M is even, this is the condition, hence it's the conditional probability. Okay, so how many ordered pairs or how many elements of the sample space will belong to that event? Let's say the first is M. Okay, so if M is 2, okay, and you want M to be greater than N, so for 2 it is only 2 1, that the girl gets 1. If it is 4, then the next even number, then the girl can get 1 or 2 or 3. Okay, so it is 1 less than the even number. So if the boy gets 6, then it is 1 to 5, so 5. If the boy gets 8, then 1 to 7. If he gets 10, the last even number in the set, or the largest even number in the set, then it's 9. So if you add them, you'll get 25. So 25 upon 100. So 25 is the sample, is the cardinality of the event. 25 outcomes belong to that event. So now the definition of probability, number of favorable outcomes upon the total number of outcomes. So 25 upon 100 is 1 upon 4. Okay, yeah. So in this video we'll cover the first 50% of the, rather we have covered first 50% of the questions. In the next video, which I'll release tomorrow, I'll solve the remaining 7 questions. Okay, so thank you for watching the video. I hope your queries got answered. So see you in the next video where we will be solving questions 9 to 15. Thank you.